All right. Welcome back to another episode of AYS Fight Club, the show that is often imitated but never duplicated. I'm one half of your host. I am Daniel Dees. Alongside me, as always, is Matt Bricker. Matt, what a week of MMA. I mean, we had a great event Saturday, and then this week has been the Jon Jones show for all intents and purposes. So let's go ahead and dive into UFC 260 before we start talking Jon Jones. We'll get to the main event later. Let's talk about let's start talking about the co-main event. Let's talk about Vicente Luque versus Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley, he finally came out. He wasn't reserved. He came out guns a-blazing. That was probably the best fight we've seen out of Woodley since maybe since he fought Darren Till. Maybe that's why I'm thinking. Like, we haven't seen that version of Woodley in forever. It just so happens that Luque got the better of the exchanges. He got the Darson and tapped him out. Matt, do you think this is it for Woodley?
I think it's it at the top tier. I think he'll still stick around and still fight, even if it's not the UFC. But I mean, top tier, yeah. I think that was it. Like I said last week, if he wanted to get back in that title chase, he wanted another run. It had to start here, and it didn't. So I think his top tier days are done in the UFC.
Yeah, I can see him probably having one more fight, probably headline prelim card on ESPN or ESPN2 leading into the pay-per-view. But I just don't see him being that marquee guy anymore. I don't see his name holding much water. His name's not going to help you sell an event, but it could probably tune some people in for a prelim card to bring them over to the pay-per-view. So what do you think Tyron Woodley's legacy is now that the dust seems to be settling on his career? Do you think he's a top welterweight, probably top 5 welterweight of all time? Where do you rank him in terms of welterweight?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's up there. I mean, everyone's always going to remember how he defeated Robbie Lawler, to win the title. That's always going to be a bright, spot for him. He had longevity. He stuck around for a while, and that's always something, especially nowadays with fighters. He was able to stick around for a while. So, I mean, I don't know about top 5. I'd have to look at the names, but yeah, I mean, he's definitely going to be, I would think so, considered a top welterweight.
Yeah, that he probably had one of the most memorable victories to capture that belt, knocking out a guy who's built for that kind of fight, who's built for war and Robbie Lawler. He got that title off of him. Then he had such a good fight with Stephen Thompson in that first fight, and then it's just that fight against Stephen Thompson. I feel like that changed him. I feel like Thompson hit him with shots that made him change his whole outlook on fighting going forward. I felt like as soon as he got that fight with Thompson, he changed his whole style. He became more reserved. He wasn't much of a killer anymore. He never put the pressure on. He always fought on the defensive side, and I think that became his undoing for his career. So do you think I'm off target there when I said that fight changed him?
No, I mean, I think that happens to a lot of champions is, the fight up the mountain is they have the pressure on and they're hunting it down, and once they get it, they don't want to lose it, so they kind of sit back a little bit and become more reserved in their nature because they can't go out and they're worried about, oh man, I'll get caught if I go out and I'm high pressure, high intensity, how I got it, because when I was climbing the mountain, I didn't have nothing to lose. But now, I got the belt, I got everything to lose, the money's better, everything's different. So I think that affects a lot of fighters. Now, I think definitely that's something that played into Woodley's downfall is not wanting to give up what he had.
Absolutely. Well, it was a great night for Vicente Luque. Do you think this win over Woodley established him as a top guy in the welterweight division?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps. I mean, Woodley is still a name. He's not, way past his prime. I mean, you look at the guys that, like we talked about, who Woodley had lost to, was all top-tier guys. And for Luque to come in and finish him, that's definitely got to put him with those names that have beat Woodley. So, yeah, I think it definitely gets him, it puts him in a very advantageous position to keep going up.
Right. So, yeah, that was our co-main. Now, let's move on to the fight that had that co-main feel to it just based off of who was in it. I'm talking Sean O'Malley versus Thomas Almeida. I picked Almeida because I really don't like picking guys coming off of knee surgery, especially two knee surgeries like Sean O'Malley. Dude, his legs just aren't built for this, but he came out absolutely destroyed Thomas Almeida, and destroyed is putting it very lightly. And he had one of the best knockouts of the year. Thomas Almeida was on the ground. He just casually walked over, clocked him, knocked him out cold. So what do you think this is the resurgence of Sean O'Malley?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it definitely helps. Coming off of a loss, it can always tell you a lot. But it looked like in his mind, he never lost. He never accepted it as a loss. So, I mean, I guess all better for him. He is in the right mindset. Just come in, just back to business. And, that's what he looked like. So, yeah, I mean, mental is a big part of this game. And for being so young in his career, to just come in there and pick up pretty much right where he left off shows a lot.
Absolutely. And after the fight, Dominic Cruz toyed with the idea of him matched up with Sean O'Malley. Do you think that would be the fight that would launch Sean O'Malley, that victory? Do you think that would launch him into the title picture?
I mean, it did for Cody Garbrandt, I think it would be interesting to see somebody who can move like Cruz, someone who's not going to stand there and take an O'Malley hit like that, So, yeah, I think it would tell us a lot about O'Malley as a fighter overall.
Right. I feel bad for picking against Sean O'Malley against Thomas Almeida, and I would feel bad picking against him against Dominic Cruz because I am going to take Cruz because Sean O'Malley has never and probably will never fight a guy like Dominic Cruz. The dude has a one-of-a-kind style. He doesn't stay in one place at one time. However, though, Sean O'Malley has that dynamite in his hand, and Dominic Cruz is getting up there in age. He has a ton of miles on him. So I think as of right now, I will pick Dominic Cruz in that fight. But if it happens in that fight week and when we break it down, it might change Sean O'Malley. I'm not 100% sure. But needless to say, both guys got some bad knees on them. So I think that's just funny in of itself, just two guys with bum knees going at it like that. So let's go ahead and let's move on to the main event, the fight that took social media by storm. Let's talk about Francis Ngannou and Stipe Miocic. So we got that wrong. Francis came in with the technique. He didn't come out windmilling his punches. He wasn't throwing haymakers. He was very meticulous in his strikes. He planned everything out, and he can wrestle now. Like when he sprawled, my jaw dropped, and I knew right then and there this was game over for Stipe. I thought that he was going to get knocked out then, but he didn't. He survived the onslaught. Then round two came and just got blasted. So, Matt, what did you think of Francis's performance?
Hey, I mean, he went back to the drawing board and came back and reinvented himself, and that's what you got to do. Your skill set that you have can only get you so far, especially in the UFC, especially when you get up in that title picture. You've got to be able to add to your game and adapt to, your situations. And he did just that, so he did exactly what he needed to. Stipe, has the background and just overall skill set. I mean, we talked about it. He's still probably a better skill set overall than Ngannou.
Oh, yeah.
But things like that happen. And sometimes all you need is just enough, and Ngannou got just enough of everything else to where his strengths could come through. And I think that's exactly what helped him out here.
Yeah, we don't have the pay-per-view buy numbers out just yet. I'm sorry, I wish we had that just so we can talk more about his drawing ability. But just based off of the social media presence, I felt like that fight probably got him, I want to say 600,000 buys. I think that's what it got. Where do you see his pay-per-view numbers going after that just beautiful display of power at the heavyweight division? Where do you think his pay-per-view numbers go from here?
I mean, as far as how many buys or like pay?
Buys. Just like his next fight, how many pay-per-view buys do you think he would get? Whether it's Jones or Lewis?
I think it'll go up. I mean, because you look at all the memes now, and it's all Stipe's pose. As funny as those things are, it does a lot for someone who's not a MMA fan to see something like that. Like, man, what happened to this dude? Who did this? And then you see Ngannou, and he's physically imposing. You're like, man, look at this dude. And then you dig more into it, and it kind of becomes like a wormhole, a black hole you kind of fall into once you see Ngannou. And I think he has that appeal. It's just getting the eyes on him, and I think he did that. So yeah, I definitely think it's going to go up. I mean, especially if it's Derrick Lewis next, or there's something with Stipe. I mean, we still don't know. There's a lot of ways that can go, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing but good matchups for him too. And I think which is
Wallace Adam D's on my cousin actually said on Facebook, Stipe was stale in the first. I wholly agree. I thought he was just going to see what Francis was going to come out, and it wasn't a Francis he was expecting. I think he was expecting a Francis Ngannou who came out like he did against Rosenstrike, tried to charge for it, just throwing haymaker after haymaker, see what connected. That's not what he got, and I think that kind of took him back a little, and it just rocked Stipe's brain a little bit, not physically, but mentally. I think it mentally messed with him. And when he shot for that takedown and got sprawled on, I think that also mentally destroyed him a little bit. And he's like, oh, crap, I was able to take him down with ease in our first fight, but now this dude actually has some wrestling instinct to him. I didn't expect this. And once he sprawled, like he took a lot of shots. So I think that kind of rocked his brain physically at that point. And then once second round came, that was it. I mean, I don't think you said he was adjusting the second. I don't think he was adjusting. I think he was still rocked in the first round. I think he was a little woozy, but agree to disagree on that. I just think that Francis just fought a beautiful fight. And then, like I said, it just mentally rocked Stipe. So, Matt, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, and that could have been Stipe too, worrying too much about what Francis was doing instead of what he himself was doing. And we had Austin Swallow on talking about that.
Like when you fight somebody who's the size of a building almost, like you got to fight his fight, whether you like to admit it or not. Like you have to go in there like this guy is going to probably take my head off. Like what do I do here? So
and then that's what happens to you. What happened Saturday, unfortunately. But like we had Austin on, he was talking about I hardly ever watch film of my opponent. I try to do me. I think when he was in there, he was with great reason worried about one of those shots landing. But then that's ended up what happened. You get hit with one of those shots. You worry about something so much you overcomplicate it, and you get caught. But I mean. Hey, Francis could have had, the performance of his career, and Stipe could have had a bad night, and it mixed, and Francis's improvements may have caught Stipe off guard. So it could have been a combination of a lot of things. But, Francis, overall, Stipe didn't lose it. Francis won it. And that at the end of the day, that's what it is.
100%. That was Francis's fight that he won.
He made improvements. And when, you see a guy like that make improvements, it had to have been something that he did, something he's been working on,
Yeah. And Blake just said that Francis is a whole beast. Absolutely. The dude came in, took the crown, and damn. Like, who's next for him, do you think? Do you think it's a trilogy fight with Stipe? Do you think it's Derrick Lewis, or do you think it's Jon Jones? Which one do you think's next? And follow-up question. Do you think they should book his next fight quick while that iron is hot? Because he didn't take any damage that fight. I feel like they could book him in for maybe late July if they needed to, or early August. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Put him on that card with, Conor and Dustin in July or whenever that's supposed to be. Yeah, I mean, go for it now while he's being talked about. And Jones don't want none of that. I mean, Jones does not want that. I guess they're gonna see. That first fight with Derrick Lewis, it may have a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. Stipe getting a rematch this quick, coming off. I know how they are about knockout rematches right away. I know they kind of have a thing against that. But man, I mean, either really, I think him and I think a fight with Lewis would be different this time around, especially with the title there.
I agree. No way it could be worse than that. I don't think they'll.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
Because of that fight, I think because of how that fight went down, I don't think either guy wants to go out there and do the same thing. I think they'll both come out knowing that, hey, this last fight sucked. I gotta go out there and prove that I'm better than this. Yeah, Derrick Lewis won, but did he prove that night that he was better? Did Francis prove that night that he was better than Lewis? Both are a no. So I feel like in my heart of hearts, I feel like it should be Derrick Lewis in July or maybe early August. Hell, even maybe late June if Dana White's feeling it. But yeah, Jones, I think not Jones. I think Lewis should get that fight. I feel like that would do a lot of that would show Dana what drawing power Francis has. And because of that, if like he could sell, let's say 700,000 based off his first title defense, he could go back to Jon Jones and say, look, this guy's pretty much drawing the same numbers as you. Why should I pay you that 50 million you want? No, you're going to take this 10 million, which is a great offer, by the way. Pay me 1 million. I'll go in there against Francis and get my head beat off. No, that didn't sound right. I'm sorry. But yeah, just lock me in there, Derrick. I'll do it for probably 500,000. And
what Derrick Lewis put a tweet or something out. He's like, he said, "Pay me 8 million." Shit. So I mean, there's a lot of people that are going there and fighting Ngannou. I mean, Jones, the UFC created that monster. Now they have to lay in bed with it. Jon Jones is the way he is because of the UFC. They have pampered him and spoiled him and made him the brat that he is being right now.
And what do you think it is on Jon Jones' part? Do you think he's being a brat? Do you think he's scared to fight Francis, or do you think he's scared to lose his legacy to Francis? What do you think that part is?
I think it's all of that. I think he thinks he's worth more than he is. I think it's a lot of different things. I think he's probably got some kind of messiah complex. It's also he doesn't want to lose to Ngannou. He saw what happened. It just seemed like it all kind of changed after that. After the knockout, then all of a sudden, when it could become real, when it's a fantasy, it's one thing. But then when it becomes real,
later, show me the money.
Yeah. When it's fantasy, it's one thing, but then when it's right there in your face to be a reality, then that's when it becomes a little too real for him, and he don't want to deal with it. But I mean, man, that's something that the UFC dealt with, and they're gonna have to figure something out.
I mean, he's obviously not worth the 50 million him and his manager want. The dude's never broke a million pay-per-view buys. There's no damn way he's getting that 50 million. And if he did fight Francis Ngannou, as much as Jon Jones wants to admit it, or anybody Jon Jones fans out there want to admit it, Francis will be the A side of that fight. I mean, it is what it is. Do you think Francis is the A side, or am I crazy for saying that?
I mean, you the champion. I mean, that's one of the perks that comes with it. You're on the top of the mountain. Somebody's got to knock you off. If Jon Jones comes in, no matter what his overall legacy will be at the end of the day, he's still coming in not the king of the heavyweight division. He's still got to chop down Ngannou. So yeah, I mean, Ngannou has done the work to get the belt. That makes him the top of the division. That puts him on the A side.
Oh, 100%. So now let's go on. Let's talk about Jon Jones. He's talking about fighter pay. He's talking like, yeah, I'm being so disrespected by the UFC, blah, blah, blah. But like you said, this is the monster Dana White and the UFC created, because he's sitting there saying he's being mistreated. But how can Jon Jones sit there and say that when he had an entire event moved for him because he couldn't get his picograms level right, because he was popped for something dirty. He couldn't get his levels back to where they needed to be. So he got kicked out of Vegas. He can't fight in Vegas anymore because of that. So they moved his ass right to California and said, well, we did this for you. And now Jon Jones is like, oh, poor me. UFC's not treating me right. But now Dana White and UFC doctors are sitting there saying, well, your levels will always be off. So you're getting a little exemption for your levels. So he gets a built-in excuse for him his levels are higher than the average man, which they always will be. And his levels got messed up because he was taking pills, love making pills, because he couldn't get it up for the past steroid abuse that he's been taking. I mean, even his brothers in the NFL have been popped for steroids. So do you think Jon Jones has any leg to stand on when he says the UFC is mistreating him? What do you say to that?
Not at all. If anything, he's mistreated the UFC with just his numerous run-ins and just everything that he's done to the organization. They have bailed him out of so many situations. If any other fighter would have done half the stuff that he does, with the exception of Conor, they'd be gone. Like
Mhm.
on one of those kind of incidences, they'd be going, we've seen it. It still happens. What happened to who was it that not too long ago in Abu Dhabi we snuck a girl in or snuck somebody in
Yeah,
and they cut him.
they cut him. But if that had been John
They
Jones
cut
and
him.
Connor, like literally the only
It
two
would have been nothing.
people who could get away with that.
Yeah. I mean, Jon Jones and Connor are the only ones who can pretty much get away with highway robbery in the UFC. Anybody else is just a minor, and they're gone. They're done. They're the example. Why not?
I don't even think Adesanya or Jorge Masvidal could get away with that
No,
kind of stuff. I
no.
don't think Sean O'Malley could get away with that. I think literally the only two who could get away with it is Jon Jones and Conor McGregor. I mean, Conor and Jon Jones are literally that spoiled, affluent child whose daddy gets them out of all the legal trouble out there. I mean, that's who they are. And for Jon Jones to sit there saying, I'm being mistreated, I'm being disrespected, like he needs to read the room on that one. And Facebook comment. This is a damn good comment right here from Wallace Adams. Says the only way UFC pays $50 million to anyone is when Endeavor goes public. And if y'all missed the news this week, Endeavor bought out the whole shares, all the shares of UFC stock amongst the board members, and now they're going to go public with it. I'm pretty sure that's about to go public. So maybe. I mean, I think you have a damn good point. I think that's the first time we'll see that 50 million fighter, and it won't be Jon Jones. Even if they can't afford to pay him 50 million, it will not be him. I think it will either go to Francis or it will go to Connor. I mean, facts are facts. And yeah, I'm waiting on that IPO too. I mean, I might, as soon as that goes public, I want to buy me some Endeavor stock because of Francis Ngannou. I think he's what the sport needs. I think ever since he lost to Stipe that first time, he matured greatly. Everybody in his camp says how much he has matured based off of that one fight because he believed in his own hype going into Stipe. Then he lost to Stipe, and then he fought Derrick Lewis, lost to Derrick Lewis, and he pretty much reinvented himself and training with Kamaru Usman, for example. Like he sought out help. He never thought that I'm the prize in this gym. No, he came up, he left, he packed his bag, he went to go see Kamaru Usman, and he's been taking boxing advice from Mike Tyson, taking boxing advice from Teddy Atlas. So the dude's growing. He's doing all the right things to rebound from what he was to what he is now. So I think once that $50 million check gets cut, it's not going to have Jon Jones's name on it because why would you cut that check to somebody who's not only going like he's leaving his prime right now, but also to somebody who's just a chucklehead like Jon Jones. So I don't know why they would pay him that 50.
And with the it's good, just kind of a side thing to make the UFC all that more interesting. The Venom deal is starting. I think April 10th is when it actually kicks in.
Yeah,
So
was the last time we will ever see those ugly Reebok kicks.
Reebok's out, Venom's in, so something new that can grab attention. So hey, everything's kind of going in the right direction if they can build off of it properly.
I mean, if it's anything that looks like the leaked pictures, I'm not a fan, but hopefully Venom saw the leaked pictures and saw the blowback. Hopefully they changed what is happening because it just looks basic, generic, just like the Reebok. We need something that pops, something that grabs onto the attention, like captures the imagination.
If they at least, I love what PFL does, even though it's kind of just basic and generic. They're allowed like 3 sponsors or something, and there's designated spots on the kit where they can put. I mean that's good. I mean because they're still in a uniform, but they still have just that touch of where they can make their money off of sponsors. So I love that. I know Venom's not doing that. Maybe that's hopefully eventually something UFC can incorporate in. But yeah, I love that about what PFL did, where it's still a uniform. There's still you just got your color changes, but you have your special little touches in your sponsors on it.
Oh yeah, I miss the sponsors. I'm not gonna lie to you. I miss seeing Condom Depot, Mickey's Malt Liquor.
The tattoos, like the that stuff is huge in Poland. They still do it. Almost every fighter wears the big, massive chest, like sticker tattoos of the casinos and stuff like that. That stuff is still huge.
Absolutely, dude. I love how Poland does it. Like, do like the little stick-on tattoos.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good stuff.
Whatever it is, painter, whatever it is. Yeah.
That's so damn cool. All right. And Jon Jones is trying to speak up for the little man now, but we all know we see behind the curtain. We know that it's it's him speaking for himself, but he says he's speaking up for the little guy, like fighter pace, blah, blah, blah. But then somebody came forward, and it was Derrick Brunson, who I think had the best opinion on the matter, best take on the matter. He said, he's talking about Luke Rockhold, who called out Dana White about the money, but it was Luke Rockhold who signed the 10-fight contract. He calls out Jon Jones, and he says, I ain't never hear a fighter on top say fighters need to be paid more. It's always I need to be paid more. Smart logic say if you're on top group up, which in return would benefit you later, but no one cares until it hits close to home. While we're talking about fighters' pay, what about the fighters who fight to fight? I'm not one of them, so it doesn't pertain to me, but I'm compassionate for those individuals. The 1% need to fight their own battles. We learned more for Conor doesn't equal better fighter pay. So he's talking about, just because you're fighting against Conor or you're in the same card as Conor does not mean your pay increases. So he brought that to like something that people often misspeaks about, like, hey, I'm fighting Conor, but I'm not getting as much as people think. It's a red painting night for me, but what a red painting night is, I was making $90,000 this fight. Now I'm making probably $250,000 this fight, maybe $500,000 this fight. And his third tweet said, so with that being said, Dana investors, I'm with y'all. Keep eating until these guys get smart and apply that pressure. Fighters don't sign a 10-fight contract and complain after 2 fights. Where was that energy beforehand? That's a damn good point. He's mostly talking about Luke Rockhold on that, which I think he's kind of clamoring for that fight for Luke Rockhold to return to middleweight, but that's another story for a different time. But he has a damn good point. Where's all this pay me before you sign that contract? Why is it pay me after you sign that 10-fight contract 2 fights in? So what do you think of Brunson's comments?
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you want to wait until nobody wants to build the house. They just want to move into it. You gotta, everybody needs you. It's going to take those bigger names to help out. I mean, that was the whole thing with starting a union and stuff like this. And it was always the bigger names that were like, no. So until you get everybody involved, that's just what's going to happen. I've seen a painting before, and it's like a round table, and it's maybe a couple old guys sitting at the table, and under it is like hundreds of normal people. And the insinuation is if these people just stand up, they take over the table. Like the table is gone and the control is gone. So they need to come together, like you said, before the contract. Once you sign the contract, that's your own fault. You know exactly what you're getting into. But before, if it can be, something done before, and get the fighter pay up. Because, I mean, I can only imagine, what endeavors, pulling in at the end of the day, and what Dana White, we've heard the Dana White numbers. I mean, he's probably making more than 95% of the fighters put together at the end of the day. So it's just going to take more people just chiming in and starting at the bottom and starting early and making it know what's going on and fighting for a change early until it's too late, and fighting for a change at the end when you've kind of already put yourself into it. Then it's, unfortunately it's your fault because you knew what you were getting into.
Yeah. And especially when you sign that fight, and why would you even open your mouth after you sign that contract? It doesn't make sense. Well, you're causing all this headaches for me. You got 1 fight left on your contract. Good. All right. Good luck getting that fight now. We'll offer you the most bullshit fight we can just to say we meet our obligation end of it. We'll give you like the number 84th ranked middleweight, and we're going to pay you peanuts for it. So, hey, that's on your contract. They'll either take that fight or don't fight at all. So that is their fault. Don't open your mouth after you sign the contract. People see through that, especially UFC lawyers, especially Dana White. Dana White's been in the promotion game for God knows how long. Like, dude, has been enthralled with the sport. Like he started off shadowing boxing promoters back in Boston. Like, he knows the ins and outs. He knows every negotiation tactic that you have. So Jon Jones taking a Twitter saying, well, what about this, my fight pay? What about what I've done, the numbers I pulled in, even though he's never sold more than 1 million. So that's where we are right now. Like, Dana literally has Jon Jones, people like Luke Rockhold by the balls because, look, you signed this contract saying you're going to give me X amount of fights, and this is what you're going to do. So, like Wallace Adams said a while ago, he said, we're not seeing that $50 million paycheck until Endeavor goes public. And that's if Endeavor wants to pay you that money. Like, what's the incentive to pay Jon Jones $50 million after everything he's doing now? Like, don't bite the hand that feeds you. And right now, Jon Jones is just chomping away. So that's so Derrick Brunson did it right. He said, let's not fight for us. Let's fight for the guys holding up the table, like you said, in that payment, like that painting, like the guys are holding up the table. That's who Derrick Brunson is speaking for. Like Derrick Brunson has guaranteed pay, but these guys are fighting paycheck to paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. They're literally fighting paycheck, paycheck, paycheck.
And the guy that's working at FedEx right now and then going to practice after so he can make his $1,000 in the UFC fight to eventually get to where he can quit that full-time job and train full-time and become a permanent fighter. A lot of people don't realize these guys don't all live in mansions and drive Ferraris, you know. A lot of them, like you said, those guys, there's a lot of guys still working jobs, and those are the guys that need the help. And once that help starts at the base, then it can work its way up. But it's got to start somewhere, and the only way to start building is at the bottom and build your way up. But like you said, nobody, things are too top heavy concerns, and you got to get to the basis.
Yeah. All right. We have a new fight announcement this week, one that no one's literally talked about as a possibility. I'm talking about Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards. I mean, we always thought that from here on out, ever since he beat Conor, that Nate's going to be taking just big money fights. So, for one, I thought that Nate would be probably fighting someone like Dos Anjos at welterweight. Maybe he would fight maybe Santiago Ponzinibbio, maybe welcome him, like get his fight night headline. But no, it's Leon Edwards, actually. So what do you think about this matchup? On the surface, I'm taking Leon. So who do you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Leon too. But I don't know. It didn't grab me the way I thought it would when I would finally hear for sure that Nate Diaz was coming back. I don't know. It's just something. It's nothing against Leon either. He's an amazing fighter. I think it's gonna be a great fight. But just I don't know. Maybe I don't know if the Nate thing is kind of wore off, and it's just I don't know. It's just it didn't feel like it didn't grab me the way I thought it would when I finally heard that he was coming back.
Right. When I first saw it, I was like, man, what a disappointment fight for Nate. But then the more I let it stew in me, the more I thought about it, I feel like this is a favor for Leon Edwards after the Chimaev fight got broken down, after every fight that he scheduled got called off. And then he had to fight Bilal Muhammad on short notice and didn't in the way many people did, but he did look great against Bilal Muhammad. He was whipping his ass for a full round. It could be argued as a 10-8 round. And then he kind of scooped his eyeball out. But I feel like this is the UFC saying, this is your time, Leon. We're giving you a big-name fighter. We're doing this as a favor to you. Now, you got to go out there and prove that. If you could beat Nate Diaz, then we'll definitely line you up for a title shot for the winner of Masvidal Usman. So I think that's what they're setting up here. So what you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially with the way things have been going for him, and he gets a win over Nate. I mean, I don't see any other roadblock that could stop him from getting a title aside from his apparent bad luck that he has with matchmakings. But I mean, for it to be put pen to paper, I don't see anything that should come between that.
Yeah. Let's just play a little game of what if. All right, so Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz, they're locked in the cage. The fight actually happens. I mean, it has been announced, but we know how these things work. We know how we get hyped for a fight. Someone pulls out with like a week or two left, and we get a short notice fight and just takes the wind out of ourselves. But let's just play a game of what if. All right, what if the cage door locks and Nate Diaz actually comes out on top, goes out there and beats Leon? What do you think is next for Nate if he doesn't? Do you think he gets the title shot, or do you think he gets a Conor trilogy? What do you think where do you think he goes from there?
I guess it really depends on where Nate's mind frame is right now. What path is he trying to take? Is he doing all this to try to get to Conor, or is he just getting in there just because he truly wants to fight? So I guess a lot of it's going to come down to that. I would say if he wins, though, I mean, man, you almost have to give him the title shot because, I mean, who else is there? I mean, Leon's at the top. If he knocks off Leon, it kind of he's kind of sitting good. And you can imagine Nate and if I mean, I think Usman's gonna win, but if Masvidal, could you imagine, Nate and Masvidal, with the trash talking, for that
BMF
setup of a match? Absolutely, So, I mean, Nate could definitely hold his own if he's put in the title picture. But like I said, I mean, you don't know. He have a red eye target on Conor, and that's his whole gear. So I guess we just got to see, what he's focused on. I know he had some him and Dustin were set to fight at one point. And there was a fallout with that. So you never know. He may go after the winner of that fight. Use this as his branch back in, and then jump on whoever wins that one. Just So I mean, it's going to depend on where Nate's mind frame is.
Absolutely. But that being said, it is a game of what if. Honestly, I'm thinking about. I think it's just going to be a one-sided beating on behalf of Leon Edwards. I don't think there's anything Nate brings to the table that Leon can't handle. I mean, just based off of what we've seen in recent fights, Leon Edwards' striking is just levels above Nate's, and that's no disrespect to Nate, but I just think Leon is one of the top strikers in that division, and Nate is pretty undersized for a welterweight. So, in my opinion, I think this is going to be a 50-45 affair on behalf of Leon Edwards. So, what's your official prediction for that one, just based off announcement?
Yeah, I think so. Nate's definitely a hard guy to put out. And, yeah, I think Leon's just going to grind him, keep the pressure on, stay in his face, and get that probably 50-45. I think Nate, won't be totally out of it. But, yeah, I think Leon is just going to keep the pressure, stay in his face, not let Nate get comfortable. That's the whole big thing. Don't let him get comfortable in there.
Yeah. So, yeah, Nate Diaz, Leon Edwards, it's on. Can't wait for that one. All right, so moving on. We actually got some Darren Till was out against Marvin Vettori. So now we got Kevin Holland, big mouth, coming in, fighting Marvin Vettori on ABC, no less. Do you think this is a perfect rebound for Kevin Holland after his disappointing performance against Derrick Brunson?
I think it's definitely the next best thing he can do, get back in there and try to, shake that off and keep moving forward. But as often as he fights, he can still get a title shot this year, just as often as he fights and as many times as he gets in there, and he's always willing to jump in there. And I think that shows a lot, and the UFC does. We give him a lot of crap, but they do remember when somebody goes out there for them time after time. And he's done it a lot, especially last year with 2020. He saved them on a lot of fights.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing it again, jumping there, because this card is not what it should be to be on ABC.
Right.
To be, it's not, it's a fight night card, but this is not what you really want to put out there on ABC. So, yeah, He's going in there to save it. And, yeah, Vettori is still a beast. So a win would definitely get him going in the right direction, and vice versa. It really helps both guys, whoever could come out on top.
Yeah, just looking at that card right now. Main event will have Kevin Holland versus Marvin Vettori. Co-main, we got Arnold Allen versus Sadiq Youssef. That's going to be a fun fight.
Yeah.
We got Kyle Dawkins versus sorry, can't pronounce these names. That's the Dagestani, Kirazev, I think his name is. Then we got the middleweight. We got Sam Alvey versus Julian Marquez. Sam Alvey always brings dynamite in his hands. We got Nina Ansaroff versus Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern is someone who they are trying to push into the spotlight. And then when I think ABC and Disney, of course, I'm thinking Mike Perry. He'll be fighting Daniel Rodriguez. So fun fights, but not a lot of big names to draw in that ABC crowd. So what fight on that card are you most looking forward to, just based off what I just said?
Actually, one that you did not say, Mateusz Gamrot. I'm ready for him to really, I think that his first fight in the UFC was I'm about to
But
look
he's
up to
not
see who
main
he's
card,
fighting.
he's ESPN Plus card. So I was just breaking down main
Yeah,
card. Yeah, I am looking
yeah,
forward to.
yeah. I knew he was on the prelims. But I just think he's gonna have a performance of the night. Um, he's, I think that first fight was, he was getting in the UFC. How the UFC thing, the UFC jitters as they call it. But man, this guy is something special. He has been for a long time. He was the KSW champ. Featherweight and lightweight champ. He did the Amanda Nunes thing. He went back and forth between weights, defended the title. 17-0 when he came to the UFC. He defended
Mhm.
both titles for years. He was the featherweight champion for like 4 years and the lightweight champion for like 5 years. I mean, this dude just, he fought everybody. He was one of those two, like Roberto Soldic, that would defend his title on like a week notice. They'd have a pullout, they'd throw him on the card, week notice, and he'd defend his title. So, I mean, he's definitely at the forefront of that Polish movement, and I think this is definitely a good fight to where he can step out of that rust fight he had the last time and really show what he's capable of. I don't think he nearly showed what he was capable of in his debut, and I'm definitely expecting a different fighter this time. So I'm really excited to see him, bust out of that shell this time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's I can't wait for this, especially like you said, the Gamrot fight against Scott Holtzman, and we also got John McDessie on the prelims. I'm a huge McDessie fan. I've never seen him born fight with him. So yeah, that's next week. But let's go ahead and move on to something that really caught my attention. That was Patricio Pitbull. He made this comment, and when I thought about it, I was like, you know what? He's kind of right here. And we talked last week about how Bellator and PFL are both stepping up to try to be that competition for the UFC. And when he said that, I think this is going to get a lot of gears turning in people's head. He said Mike Chandler winning the UFC lightweight title means the UFC is going to have to suck it up that they got the second best lightweight in the world. Okay, when he said who lost to a guy that was coming up from a smaller weight class, they're going to have to realize that the pound for pound best fighter in the world is not from the UFC. It's from Bellator, and his name is Patricio Pitbull. When he said that, I was like, he's not wrong. I mean, if Mike Chandler goes out, beats the piss out of Charles Oliveira, and he holds up that title, people are going to start saying, yeah, but he kind of got smoked by Patricio Pitbull, not once, but twice. A smaller fighter at that. So what do you think about Patricio's comments?
I hate MMA math because that's essentially what it is. I hate it. I've said that a million times. I hate it. But yeah, I mean, he makes a point. But man, that's the whole thing about the problem with not having a unified or undisputed champion is so and so beat so and so, but I can beat so and so. You got 6 degrees of separation of how this champion beat this champion, and then it's it's a mess. That's really what you have. But then I bet there's somebody saying, "Oh, well, I beat Pitbull, so that makes me better than Pitbull," and then that person's been beat, and it's going to be always well, I beat so and so. It was. I mean, I don't really think that should be the title fight, in my opinion. But I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, man, that's pretty much what it is. I mean, he's getting his name out there. He's helping Bellator, definitely. And I know they just had their inaugural rankings just came out. I think they do top 10. I don't think they do 15. But yeah, I mean, they're doing some stuff too. And I think he's being a big ambassador for them. They just had that come out. They're finally getting back into it. They have a card tomorrow, and then I think next either Friday or Saturday they have another. So they're really jumping back on the ball. He's helping, get that pumping and going. We're talking about that, with the card coming up, and then they have their rankings coming out, and then so there's a lot going on. He's being at the forefront of that. So even if what he's saying is not true, per se, or a lot of people don't believe it, we're talking about it. It's on shows like this right now. We're talking about Bellator. We're talking about people. So that's taken away from chunk where we probably be talking about something going on in the UFC. So even if not, he's getting Bellator's name out there, and more so, even if they're realistically, these guys are not going to catch the UFC. But is Bellator going to be number 2, or is PFL going to be number 2? There's a lot more closer competition there. Nobody wants to be the number 3 organization. So I almost think it's more so a battle between PFL and Bellator for number 2, because that's gonna, that could be a big, a big dispute there. Is, who's going to be right under UFC. So they could be gearing up for something like that. Him trying to plant the seed, compares to UFC, compares to the UFC. So that way, if people compare Bellator to the UFC, then they're naturally going to say, oh, well, they're better than PFL because look, everybody's comparing to UFC. So a way to kind of backwash out PFL out the way. So you never know.
All right, but so yeah, UFC is going to be the number 1 American promotion for the foreseeable future, especially with Endeavor taking over. But it's nice that they're trying to swing at the king. So enough about
Absolutely.
America's number 1 promotion. Let's talk about Europe's number 1 promotion. Let's talk about Polish MMA. Let's talk KSW. All right, so we ain't got a card to break down for you this week. MMA is pretty much taking a soft week off. I mean, there are fights happening, but Matt, let's talk 3% Polish. This is your segment. The floor is yours. Let's get it going.
Yeah, not too much really going on, especially with the Easter holidays right now. A couple of things did come out. KSW 60 is actually this month, April 24th. So this will be almost a full year in a row of events. The co-main event is going to feature Thomas Narmo, who is fighting out of Norway. I actually spoke to him earlier this week. My article came out on mymmanews.com where I spoke to him. Man, he just turned pro in 2019. Very dangerous guy. He actually was a hockey goalie. He came out of the hockey world. So more so we see him coming out of wrestling and football. This was a hockey goalie. He was a highly touted draft prospect. He didn't go, into the draft, but he played, semi-pro in Europe and in Norway and stuff like that. But he decided to go the MMA route. And he does TV show. He's in Ragnarok is a TV show on Netflix. He has had some roles on there. He wants to do some acting. He said, but I got to keep my face pretty. He said, so I just got to go in there and win my fight so I can keep my acting career up. So, I mean, the dude is definitely a character. Man, he's one of those guys that when I talk to, and I've been very fortunate over the last couple of years to talk to a lot of great fighters. But he's one of the literally the handful that really, there was something special before, him hitting big lights, and KSW is a big stage, but this guy's going to go higher than that, and Norway is actually the only Nordic country, which is considered Denmark, Finland, Iceland, all those. Norway is actually the only one where professional MMA is not legalized. So his big mission is to help carry that torch. He said there's a lot of amazing fighters here in Norway, but we literally have to go. We train here, but if we really want competition, we have to go elsewhere. And he said, I'm going to wear my Nordic flag proudly. My Viking heritage blood is flowing through me. It flows through my brothers, and we're ready. So he's going to use KSW as a way to really push his name out there, show what Norwegian fighters, what Nordic fighters can do, and try to, expand MMA. And I mean, it's it's almost like every year, it kind of the world, kind of accepts MMA a little bit more. It gets a little bit more accepted, and he's hoping Norway will be next. All the other Nordic countries, legalize professional MMA. So he was just it was just a different kind of guy to talk to. Very interesting. He's fighting in the going straight to the co-main event, so you can tell what KSW thinks about him already. His debut in KSW is going to be in the co-main event. He was brought in the cage during KSW 59. He's fighting Izu Ugabo. He's originally from one of the African countries, and then grew up in Poland as a small child. And he actually was a professional boxer. He was like 18-4 as a professional boxer before turning to MMA. So they're fighting in the co-main event. They're heavyweights. So Narmu, he's 6'7". He's a big guy, a big swinger. So it was just interesting to talk to him. I think that's definitely going to be, a fight to watch and a fighter to watch, even though he's not Polish. He's definitely fighting in Poland's, key organization. So that's that for this week.
All right, so that is this for this week. So that does it for us this week. I'm surprised we went this long. If it wasn't Francis, it was Jon Jones this week. I'm surprised we got enough content in for this. But hey, that's why we get paid the big bucks. That's why we are.
Yeah.
That's why we're often imitated and never duplicated. So, all right, everybody, that does it for us this week. Tune in next week. We'll actually be going down that fight card, that Kevin Holland, Marvin Vettori fight card. We'll go into more detail on that. So that does it for us tonight. So, Matt, what's the number one rule of Fight Club?
First rule of the Fight Club, tell all your friends about the Fight Club.
Absolutely. All right, that does it for us this week. Tune in next Thursday. Thursdays are the new Friday. So be good. Have a good Easter. Have a great Easter with your family.